In case you've been living under a rock, Commander is easily the biggest Magic the Gathering format out there. Even during a pandemic, with so many stores holding limited or no in-store events, and with Wizards not holding sanctioned events for any format, Commander players find a way, from the creation of the fantastic Spell Table website, using webcam solutions such as Discord, to actually playing Magic online. Financially, it's also one of the biggest drivers of card prices currently, whether you play competitively or casually. Wizards of the Coast has held that 2020 is the year of Commander, and with so much product supporting the format already released or coming soon, there's something for everyone. Rather than lament Jumpstart's low availability or complain about VIP boosters, I'm spending this video talking about one of the Ikoria Commander decks that I've grown to adore in these past few months. Kalamax the Stormsire. Kalamax is the face commander of the Arcane Maelstrom pre-constructed deck, and is an elemental dinosaur from Ikoria. Now, if you know anything about me, you'd know that dinosaurs and I, we have a close relationship. But I digress. I haven't even introduced myself yet. I am Baltan2, longtime Magic player, first-time content creator, and lifelong fan of dinosaurs and giant monsters alike. Ikoria as a set was right up my alley, since it combined so many interests of mine in one neat package, and you better believe I'm after plenty of the Godzilla series cards. We'll get to those another time though. This video is actually the first in a series I'm calling Deck Evolution, chronicling the journey some of my beloved Commander decks take from creation, or in this case, opening a pre-con, to... well, that's the thing. Some decks are the flavor of the month, look enticing the first few times you play it, but fall flat and are taken apart or replaced with another commander. Others have staying power and get an opportunity to grow with time and are inspired by later cards. And still others become signature decks that you want to bling out and maintain forever. I don't know yet where Kalamax falls, but my hunch is that this spiky boy ends up being a mainstay of mine. As such, I plan to keep playing this deck for some time, and that means the deck evolves. I'm not presenting a single deck tech to appease the almighty YouTube algorithm and foster engagement with the latest release, but instead use the decks I enjoy to illustrate a process that you don't see covered nearly as often, how people allow their favorite decks to evolve over time. This deck, for example, is not currently the original precon, but has been adjusted with several cards, and we're going to go over that. My intent is to revisit my Kalamax deck several times, based on the lessons learned from games in my playgroup, and wanting to foster certain play patterns with the deck. I might do the same for other decks I pick up in the future that merit long-term development too, depending on how things go. But back to Kalamax. Kalamax the Stormsire is a 4/4 elemental dinosaur that cares about an interesting combination of factors: being tapped, casting instants each turn, growing via +1/+1 counters, and copying spells. Arcane Maelstrom does promote some of these strategies, but leaves you with a lot of room to make Kalamax more efficient or simply upgrade spells. The most noteworthy strategy with Kalamax that Arcane Maelstrom leaves out is its perfect synergy with copy spells, from the classic fork to newcomers like Narset's Reversal. Casting one of these spells in response to a sorcery of yours, or an instant or sorcery of an opponent's, when it is your first instant of the turn and Kalamax is tapped, nets you an infinite combo. The copy just has to target your original spell. The next copy you create copies the previous copy, and you proceed that way until you eventually end the loop by targeting the very first spell cast instead of your copy spell, or copy spell copies. You end up with a Kalamax as arbitrarily large as you want, 2 copies of whatever the original spell is, and a lot of copied spells. Sadly, none of the copies count towards your Storm count, as Storm requires spells that are cast, not copied. There is a difference. And you only made a bunch of copies. Conveniently, the Planeswalker Ral Storm Conduit deals damage when your spells are cast or copied, so add him to the mix to eliminate your opposition. What I particularly like about this combo potential is that you could easily build a deck around this potential and never abuse it if you so choose. For example, my regular play group is with my friends over at the Magic with Zuby Discord, and one of the rules among the games that Zuby hosts is that he doesn't like infinite combos. It's incredibly easy to avoid going off unfairly with Kalamax by simply never looping the copy combo that arbitrary number of times. You still get the 2 copies of the original spell in this way, and you do still get to make your monster grow. With these thoughts on Kalamax deck construction in mind, the next step is the fun part, playing the deck. Since Arcane Maelstrom is a precon, all that means is sleeving up and finding games to join. I highly recommend the aforementioned Discord channel, link will be in the description, but there are so many options to find places to play Magic Online with your cards and minimal setup. I played several games with the stock list, and many of the card choices stuck out as not speaking to me or being outright inferior. Let's start with the 3 biggest offenders. Number 1, Rupture Spire. Ugh. Rupture Spire is a terrible land. Unless your Arcane Maelstrom deck is literally the only set of Magic cards you own, no disrespect intended if that is the case, just saying, get rid of this thing. Even a basic land is a better replacement. I happen to have Ketria Triome, Kalamax's home turf, so that was the immediate replacement. Number 2, the Planeswalker that came in this deck, Jace, Architect of Thought. This Jace is maybe one of the worst Jace Planeswalkers out there. If nothing else, he definitely doesn't do enough work in this deck to earn the spot. Remember when I was talking about Ral Storm Conduit? Yeah. In he goes. Number 3? Eon Frolicker. Unless you're controlling them, don't give your opponents extra turns. We're going to take a card I stole from one of the other precons and put it here. Slippery Bogbonder. Unlike Cathril, the home deck for this card, we don't care about keyword counters, but hexproof is always handy to grant to Kalamax, who is the most essential part of our deck. These are the most egregious inclusions in the original precon, but I also opted to make 15 other substitutions. Some of these are definitely for the better, while others might actually be reversed in the future. Not all of these cards are outright bad, they just didn't seem to fit right with the way that I currently have the deck. The first of these is Desolate Lighthouse. I'm not entirely against the inclusion of this land, to be clear, but I wanted to step up the ramp in my deck a bit. For the time being, I'm replacing this with Blighted Woodland, but the Desolate Lighthouse may make a return, swapping out for another card. Next is one of the other commanders that actually comes in the deck, Xeris the Writhing Storm. I'm sorry, Xeris, but you're kind of cramping Kalamax's style. You'd be better suited to a deck of your own. Instead, you're being replaced with our first copy spell, Reverberate. The next card is actually 2 cards. The other remaining commander options that are included, Paco, Arcane Retriever, and Halden, Avid Arcanist. A good doggo and human, to be sure, but along the same lines as Xeris, I'm not that interested in this game of fetch. These 2 are going to make room for 2 more all-important instants, Narset's Reversal and Reiterate. Reiterate is especially good because of that buyback, giving you the opportunity to bring this back to your hand and repeat shenanigans as needed. Next on our list to remove is Lavabrink Floodgates. It's not as bad as giving your opponent's resource, but letting your opponents be in charge of when your overpriced mana rock is blown up is not the greatest idea, so we're replacing this with a cheaper artifact with greater deck synergy, the infamous Smuggler's Copter. Been waiting a few years to put that thing to use again. This may be a bit of a flavor fail, I'll admit. Kalamax is not necessarily known for piloting helicopters, but it's okay because the This card is a convenient way to tap Kalamax when you'd rather not swing into any of your opponents. Next to cut is Bonder's Ornament. Most people don't like this card, so despite showing up in all 5 of this year's Commander decks, it doesn't usually make the cut. I'm going to add a much better artifact in its place, the companion to the included Lightning Greaves, Swiftfoot Boots. Kalamax might hang them from its Thagomizer, I don't know, or they're really big boots. Whatever the case, strangely they do accessorize with Kalamax. Next to remove is Glade Muse. This is a very blue card, but it's green. That alone is not the reason to cut it, but it's also much better friends with Xeris, so we're going to go ahead and say goodbye to it, and instead I'm going to slot in Refuse to Cooperate, a combination of a fun retaliation against huge X spells and a copy spell we can hang on to in our graveyard for later, thanks to Aftermath. Next, a set of cards that you probably saw coming. It is the infamous Impetus Trio that is included in this deck. This year, each Commander 2020 deck got 3 cards from the Impetus cycle in its respective colors. Sadly, they're not the slam dunk of the Vow cycle from the original Commander set, so I'm replacing these with handy cards also taken from other recent Commander decks of mine. The amazing free spell cycle that is not included in this deck, so the 2 I'm missing are Obscuring Haze and Fierce Guardianship. Fierce Guardianship in particular being an amazing protection, and also adding in Sheevan Reef. If you're not following, and by no means do you need to follow the cuts that I'm presenting here, I'm just showing you an idea of how I'm changing this deck, but just FYI, also a better land choice than Rupture Spire. Just saying, throwing it in there. Next, Nascent Metamorph. I played this card in my first game with Kalamax, and it's very situational. My best hit that game was Sakura Tribe Elder, so at least it netted me a land. I'd rather put in a card from Commander 2019 that I took out of its original deck, Wildfire Devils. The ability to exile instants or sorceries and copy them, including from opponents' graveyards, pretty good. Definitely a bit handier for what we're trying to do. Next is Ravenous Gigantotherium. Apex Altasaur, you are not. This is also a card that's much better suited to token generation, which we're not really doing here. So that could go in the Xeris pile or slot into Marin or something. I replaced it with Nesting Grounds, but I think I could do better in this case with the later change. I just wanted somewhere to put this card since I wasn't using it in its original deck. Could be a useful way sometimes to save +1/+1 counters or rearrange them if I need them elsewhere. Next is Commune with Lava. This one might be another change that gets reversed later. As is the deck right now, it's great when you're generating ridiculous amounts of mana, but the precon doesn't currently optimize that sort of effect, and it especially hurts that Commune with Lava doesn't give you those exiled spells for free. You still have to cast them with whatever available mana you have. Instead, I'm currently using Increasing Vengeance, which I like quite a bit more thanks to that late game option to flashback for multiple spell copies. Next, Prophetic Bolt. The flavor is great, as Kalamax definitely is a dino that likes throwing around some lightning, but the effect is so underwhelming for the cost. For 1 more mana, we could just cast Sublime Epiphany instead. Look at all those modes! It does so much! Now imagine doing all of them twice. Be warned though, copied mobile spells are stuck with the same modes as the original. You don't get to choose a certain set of these and then when your spell gets copied, choose entirely new modes. You can choose new targets, but the spell itself still does everything that you select with your original choices. So if your copy's targets, as your spell copy is going to resolve first, invalidates the original, then you cause the original spell to fizzle. So be wary of this interaction if you're using Sublime Epiphany for its counter target spell ability. Otherwise, you're not going to get double the effects. Next, Hunting Pack. Playing with this card makes me sad due to the incompatibility of Storm with the Stormsire. Instead, I'm going to add yet another copy spell, this time Wild Ricochet. This option is amazing against targeted removal or anything that reads target player draws. Deny your opponent and reap twice the rewards. It also works as an expensive copy spell in a pinch, even if the original spell you're targeting does not happen to have targets to redirect, you still get the copy, so that's always handy there. With these substitutions made, my Kalamax 2.0 deck has felt a bit less clunky and more consistent. I've pulled off a few wins, but bearing in mind that you'd expect to win only 25% of your games, that alone is understandable that it's not a significantly higher number of wins. What's important is the amount of fun that can be had in those games, and this current incarnation of the deck has yielded plenty of fun, so that is a great start. However, Kalamax is not done. I want to sculpt the identity and flavor of my Spiky Dinos deck, while still adding to its performance. There are stats to consider, more games to play, more cards to bling out. I already have the next batch of card substitutions in mind, but how about you? What changes would you make to the deck next? Feel free to let me know in the comments below or reach out to me on Twitter. I'll have links to that in the bottom in the description. Thank you for watching, and please join me for the next stage in my deck evolution.